Once upon a time, there was a princess. You've probably heard of her because her name was Sleeping Beauty, and she was cursed to sleep for 100 years. The good fairy didn't want Sleeping Beauty to wake up after 100 years and find herself all alone, so she used her magic to put everyone in the castle to sleep as well. All of that you probably know, but what you probably don't know was the bit that happened in the middle, while everyone was asleep. This is that story. It had been 10 years since Sleeping Beauty had pricked her finger. The snoozing castle lay undisturbed, surrounded by a thick ring of brambles, sharp thorns, and twisted trees. The good fairy had conjured this wall to keep people out and to protect the castle's sleeping inhabitants. It should have been a peaceful place and would have been, but for one particular problem. Sleeping Beauty snored. She not only snored, but she snored very, very loudly. It rattled the glass in her window, shook the tiles on the roof of her tower, and vibrated the branches of the surrounding trees. In truth, it was an awful, horrible, dreadful noise. "Oh, I can't stand it any longer," shouted the owl. "I haven't had a proper sleep in 10 years. "Tell me about it," complained a fox. "I'm at my wit's end." "Well, it wouldn't be so bad if she was awake for half the day like most people," said a squirrel. "But she's asleep all of the time." Another tremendous snore shook the tree, almost knocking the squirrel from her branch. "Oh, well, somebody has got to do something," snapped the owl. "Then I'll do it," declared the fox. "I'll do anything for a bit of peace and quiet." "Do what exactly?" asked the squirrel. "I'm going to find the good fairy and see if she can help," he said, and off he went, another snore trembling the ground beneath his feet. He had to walk a long way to find the good fairy, as she lived very deep within the forest, so far that Sleeping Beauty's snoring could barely be heard. She lived in a small cottage built into a hollow tree. The fox approached the door, gave it 3 loud knocks, and waited. Nothing happened. He knocked again, but this time a little louder. Nothing happened. He knocked again, but this time very loudly. "Hold your horses, I'm coming," called a voice from within. The door opened inwards to reveal the good fairy, her hands covered in white flour. "Oh, have you been knocking for long?" she asked. "I'm afraid my hearing isn't what it was." "I've come about Sleeping Beauty," said the fox. "Oh, you have?" asked the fairy. "Well, I'm afraid I can't wake her. I tried. The curse is too powerful." "No, that's not it," said the fox. "It's about the snoring." "Her snoring?" repeated the good fairy. "Oh, my goodness. How can you possibly know if Sleeping Beauty snores or not?" "Because she's so incredibly loud," said the fox. "I can still hear her now, all the way out here." "Can you?" asked the good fairy, leaning out of the door. "Oh, I can't. But then again, my hearing isn't what it used to be. I'll tell you what, I'll fetch me wand and we'll go and investigate." So the fox and the good fairy returned to the castle. When they were stood outside the wall of bramble and thorns, the good fairy had to lift her hands to her ears. "Oh, my goodness, I see what you mean," she said. "And judging by those rattling roof tiles, you're right. It's coming from Sleeping Beauty's bedroom. Oh, we'd best get inside right away." For any humans, getting past the sharp prickles and thorns would have been impossible, but the fox was small enough to slip through the gaps down on the ground, and the good fairy simply made herself small enough to follow. They entered the castle, passing snoozing guards, resting maids, and even the cook slumped on a chair. Everyone was sleeping soundly, despite the loud snoring coming from above. As the fox and the good fairy made their way up the steps of the tower, The noise got so deafening that the good fairy had to conjure up a pair of earplugs for each of them. Then at last, they were outside Sleeping Beauty's door. They could tell it was her door because it had been snored right off its hinges. And there was Sleeping Beauty, looking as fair and beautiful as they remembered, her golden hair draped around her pillow. "Oh, how wonderful she looks," said the good fairy, although the moment was spoiled when the sleeping princess snored loudly. "Oh, my, this will never do," the good fairy said. "Can you do anything?" asked the fox hopefully. "Oh, I'm going to try," the good fairy replied. "I can't break or alter the curse, but I'm hoping I can do something about the noise. Perhaps some sound insulation will work." She raised her wand and cast a spell, causing the entire bedroom to be filled with thick, soft cushions. They lined the walls, covered the ceiling, and littered the floor. "That's made no difference at all," complained the fox. "That's because you're in the room with her," said the good fairy. "Wriggle outside and let me know how it sounds." So the fox did, finding a path through the cushions to arrive outside in the corridor at the top of the tower's stairs. His large fox ears were very sensitive to sound, and even with the earplugs still in, he could hear the princess's snoring, but it was definitely much, much quieter. Beside him, his eye caught sight of the collapsed door that had been snored right off its hinges. If Sleeping Beauty could knock a door over with her snores, what could she do with some cushions? He didn't have to wait long to find out. An enormous snore sent cushions blasting through the doorway, forcing him to dive aside. When he dared to peer around the doorway, he saw that most of the cushions had been sent flying either through the door or out the window. There were feathers everywhere, and the good fairy was upside down on a pile of cushions in the corner. "Well, that didn't work," he said. "It seems not," said the good fairy, righting herself. "Oh, I'll have to try something else. Something perhaps simpler is all we need." She reached into her pocket and produced a clothes peg, put there when hanging up her washing earlier. She approached the bed with it and gently slipped it onto Sleeping Beauty's nose. And the snoring stopped. "You did it," said the fox happily. "She's not snoring anymore." "Indeed she's not," said the delighted fairy. "Ah, silence at last." Except the silence didn't last long. A rumbling sound like a volcano stirring began to shudder and shake the room. "What's happening?" squeaked the terrified fox. "Oh, it's Sleeping Beauty," yelped the good fairy. "I think she's going to blow." All the clothes peg had done was trap the snorers within her, and now they were building up, trying to break free. The pressure was so great that it all got too much. The biggest, loudest snore yet erupted from the princess, shooting the clothes peg off of her nose like a firework, where it blasted through the top of her four-poster bed, through the ceiling, through the tower's roof, and straight up into the sky. It went so high and so far that it ended up in orbit. "Oh, goodness gracious me," said the good fairy. "That was loud." "Pardon?" said the fox, looking dizzy. "Oh, I'm starting to think that the snoring is all part of the curse," said the good fairy, tapping her wand against her palm. "I can't alter the curse itself, but maybe I can alter what the curse does." She raised her wand and cast another spell, and this time, whenever a snore began to emerge from Sleeping Beauty's mouth, it instantly turned into a cascade of pretty little flowers that floated to the floor. "Oh, that's amazing!" cried the fox. "You've turned ugly noise into pretty flowers." "Oh, it suits our beautiful princess," smiled the good fairy smugly. "It looks as if the problem is finally sorted." "Oh, indeed it does," said the fox gladly. "And perhaps now we woodland animals can get a good night's sleep too." The job done, they turned to leave, just as something brushed up against their feet. Looking down, they saw it was a ripple of tiny flowers flowing across the floor like water. Sleeping Beauty's snoring had been very loud, So it was being transformed into far more flowers than the good fairy had bargained for. Already there was a massive pile beside the bed, and it was growing larger and larger with each breath. "Oh dear," said the good fairy, as she and the fox found themselves knee-deep in petals. The room was filling fast. "Oh, we can't leave the place like this," panicked the fox as the flowers reached his chin. "The castle will fill up like a barrel." The good fairy, fearing they were about to be swallowed up, waved her wand and turned all the flowers back into snores. The noise was so overwhelming that all of the stones of the castle wobbled. On the bed, Sleeping Beauty was snoring once again. "Oh, now what?" whined the fox. "Oh, I don't know," said the good fairy. "I can't think of anything else. I'm afraid there's nothing more we can do." "Oh, it's a disaster," sobbed the fox. "Come on, let's go. I can't stand this any longer." "One moment," said the good fairy, approaching the bed. "As we're here, I may as well make the princess more comfortable. She's looking a little awkward on that pillow." She picked up one of the cushions from earlier and tucked it behind Sleeping Beauty's head. "There, that's better." "It is," said the fox suddenly. "It is! You've stopped the snoring!" The good fairy looked down at the princess, stunned. "Well, I never," she said. "All we needed to do to stop the snoring was to make the little Sleeping Beauty nice and comfy." Their task done, the good fairy returned to her cottage, and the fox headed straight for his bed. It would be yet another 90 years before a handsome prince stumbled upon the castle, but in the meantime, the inhabitants slept on peacefully, and above all, in silence. The end. So that you don't miss a single episode, just click that subscribe button.